extend our lunch break because of the previous session that was completed late by 20 minutes. So we need to extend the time. So more than 50% participants have joined, so we can start. Amit sir, you can put, yeah. So I welcome Mr. Kandab Bhatt from EMIL Limited on behalf of Marwadi Education Foundation and Atal Academy to deliver this session on the 4th day on structural health monitoring. So Mr. Kandab Bhatt is a graduate in civil engineering with more than 40 years of professional experience in the field of high-rise residential buildings, commercial and industrial buildings, irrigation structures such as aqueduct, viaduct, head regulators, concrete line canals, etc. He is currently associated with National Manager in Sales and Marketing of Laboratory and Field Testing Instruments for civil engineering applications at EMIL Limited, Vadodara since last 23 years. He has delivered several expert sessions at different testing national and international academic institutes and professional firms. Apart from above, he had earlier undergone training session on non-destructive testing instrumentation at Zurich, Switzerland, UK. So, sir is having vast experience as far as the field testing is concerned. So, today, sir is going to discuss about health assessment of structures and what are the field tests and what are the methodologies. So, with this note, I will request Mr. Kandab Bhatt to take over the session and continue with his presentation.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Tarak Bhai, for my introduction. And in fact, I would like to make a small correction here. Probably that information must be wrong from my end. I do not have the 40 years of experience. I'm not that old.
No, it is 23 years. I mentioned 23.
No, it was written 40. That mistake must have been occurred from my end. So I don't blame you. In fact, I am since I'm 54, so I have the how much? I mean, at least 25 years of experience, because before EMIL, I did have the experience of construction. I was in construction execution. So of course, in EMIL, I was in EMIL since 1999. So it's 23 years in EMIL. Yeah, that's true. So with that note, I would start my presentation. So, okay, should I share the screen?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I hope everybody is able to see that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you very much, Tarak Bhai, and thank you very much, the Marwadi Education Foundation, and specifically Department of Civil Engineering, for providing us opportunity to discuss about the non-destructive, or rather I would say, let's make it very general, that to discuss about the health monitoring of the structure, which is the vital part and very critical part nowadays in present scenario. So now there are, since it's quite generic and general field, that health monitoring. Sorry, Tarak Bhai, how much time do I have? I mean, I would say it's around 4.
Yeah, up to 4 we can have session, and last 15 minutes that would be question answers.
Perfect. I would finish it by 4 only. Okay. So yeah. So coming back to this thing, that health monitoring is quite generic kind of the field, and today we are going to talk about the health monitoring through non-destructive testing instruments of concrete. Now there is one more particular field, or one more particular range of instrumentation, though we are talking about non-destructive testing instruments today, in this particular session, but there is one more range which is connected with this field, that is health monitoring, is the structural monitoring instrumentation. Now, I would just, since we are talking in about NDT instruments in detail, so I would just give you very brief idea or snippets about the structural monitoring instrumentation range. Basically, those instruments are basically those are the sensors which you can install during construction, and those sensors keep on giving you the data, and the data means the data about the physical parameters, whether it is a strength. Nowadays they have the strength also, that strength monitoring is also possible, then strain, then strain, then temperature, then displacement, pressure. So this is possible, and those are the structural monitoring instrumentation range. It is a separate range altogether, and in big structures, not in normal real estate or building construction, I would say, but in very critical structures such as dams, tunnels, and sometimes bridges also, people are using those instrumentation range, and those in that particular range is also very interesting. And I would also suggest that along with this NDT range, you should explore that also. So with that note, I'll start. So as we kind of I have pointed out, and I have said and mentioned in the beginning, that we are going to discuss about the health monitoring of concrete structures through non-destructive techniques. So why NDT? I mean, because as I said, that NDT has become very critical and very prevalent nowadays, because we do not have time. Time is a critical thing. I mean, we want to do all the things like this. So time is critical aspect, and we need to complete this kind of job or this kind of the exercise within a particular stipulated time, and that's how NDT instruments come into the picture. Of course, user friendliness. What is the user friendliness? The instrument which is to be used or which are to be used for this particular field should not be very, very complex. It should be user friendly, so anybody can use and anybody can operate and give the result. So it should not be complex. That's what we mean. And drive for field testing. See, earlier people we do not have that particular kind of facility of having the field testing, but now people want to know what are the conditions prevailing in the field with respect to that particular structure, and again, as this particular subject suggests, with respect to health of that particular structure. So we need to know about in the field itself, so that we can take the decision, or rather the engineer or the client or the supervisor consultant can take the decision in the field itself. What is the condition? So that's why the drive or the requirement of field testing has become the critical, and that's how NDT are required. Complexity of projects nowadays, as I mean time goes on, there are a lot of complex projects are coming up, right? Not simple projects. Even if I talk about myself, sometimes it is very difficult for even me to understand what kind of the structural design must have been considered to construct this kind of complex structure. Because when I was in construction execution, we have very simple kind of design, and so that the structural designing also not that critical, or rather I should not use the word critical, but not that complex. Nowadays, because of the complexity of the structure, and people are making structures more and more versatile. What I mean by versatile means, I mean, there are different uses of a particular structure. If you kind of construct a tunnel, then you have different application of tunnel, not only the traffic, but there must be some, because considering the tunnel is quite exciting, or even for dam is for power generation, dam is for irrigation, and also nowadays dam is for recreation, right? So there are a lot of other applications also connected with that particular structure, and that's why projects and structures are becoming more and more complex, and that's why NDT instruments are required, or I would say critical. Change in quality concept. Now earlier people used to say high strength, high strength, high strength. Now there is one more terminology attached or connected, or rather more terminology has come, and that is the high strength to high performance. Same goes with if you are kind of if you have got the exposure to the pavement engineering, then you must be aware that earlier people used to say this VG grade, that is viscosity grade, viscosity grade. Now they are talking a different kind of thing. Same way here also. First it was high strength. Now people are talking about high performance grade concrete. So that's how we need to have the help, or we need to have the assistance from non-destructive testing instruments. And of course, there are very rapid development in electronics and software part. And since we know about this particular thing, everybody is aware that major development is coming up, and major development has happened not only in electronics but also in software. And we also should use those kind of enhancement and those kind of upgradation in instrumentation, and that's which is possible in NDT. What are NDT basics? What is NDT? Non-destructive testing. So it should be a non-invasive way. While you are doing the test with an NDT instrument, it should be without any destruction. It should be non-invasive way of testing. So it should not cause any harm to the structure. That's how the name comes. That is non-destructive testing instruments. And every field of engineering and science has range of related NDT methods. Now, if we say about concrete NDT, since we all are related to civil engineering, we talk about the NDT instruments with respect to civil engineering. But metal NDT is established well before concrete NDT. So they have got this their flaw measurement systems and the ultrasonic systems, but with respect to metal. So metal testing, NDT for metal testing is established way before the concrete NDT. And as I said, it has extensively started being in use since 1950s. Before that, I mean, even if when I joined EMIL, if I talk honestly, when I joined EMIL, then only I came to know about the NDT. Before that, I never heard about NDT, non-destructive testing instrument. Nowadays, everybody knows about NDT instruments, right? So that's the thing. And most of the classic tests have been standardized worldwide. So again, if we talk about the instruments, we will definitely talk about the standards. Just a minute. Can you give me 1 minute? I'll just go and fetch the water. Just a minute, sir. Sorry, friends. I'm sorry for small disturbance. So most of the tests worldwide have been standardized, but still there are more work is required to be done at our level in our country, India, where we have very few instruments are standardized as per IS code. We'll talk in detail as the instrument will come. And of course, some new developments are also taking place. Now, if you have the exposure about the NDT instruments, people must have heard about the classic NDT instrument, rebound hammer, ultrasonic pulse oscillator, rebar locator, corrosion. No, now there have been upgradation, enhancement in this particular range, and there are a lot of other instruments have also kind of joined in this particular range. And so you have got the versatility increased in NDT range also, which we are going to talk. We are going to talk about standard, classic, very simple, very basic NDT instruments, and then we will talk about the enhancement happened globally in NDT instruments. So what is the basic requirement of NDT? What is the objective? I would say objective is objective is to find the physical parameters. Why physical parameters? Physical parameters like strength, displacement, strain, homogeneity, quality of workmanship, crack, voids, honeycombing, reinforcement, location, permeability. Now, these are all physical parameters. What about chemical analysis? Chemical analysis of concrete, there is a different range altogether. So there is a different range specifically for chemical properties. We are not going to talk about it, but if you are interested in NDT, you can explore that particular range also, which is for concrete analysis, chemical analysis of concrete structure. Now, what are the application and use? Of course, it is condition assessment of the existing structure, remaining life estimate of the structures, finding the reasons and causes of failure of the structure, why this structure must have failed. So those, for example, in EMIL, we have a consultancy division, and around 10-12 years back, they have done a particular work in IOCL refinery. I mean, in Vadodara, we have a refinery, IOCL, where they have a structural failure, and why that happened. Then they came to know that because of the boiler blast, a lot of heat, huge heat generated. And because of that heat generation, that reinforcement, a concrete structure, reinforcement RCC structure nearby, and because of that heat, some of the reinforcement are exposed to the atmospheric condition, and because of that heat, there was huge expansion in reinforcement bars. Because of this, you must have understood that because of heat, there is expansion in metal. So there is huge expansion, and the expansion is so huge that all the columns and beams have failed, and that's how the structure collapsed. So that's that kind of thing is possible. The causes you can find through NDT. So health assessment structure after calamities such as fires and earthquake. Some of you might not be aware, but in 2001, when we had this Bhuj earthquake, Kutch earthquake, and there was a lot of havoc in Ahmedabad also, and people are using NDT. So I mean, sometimes some people took the advantage also out of that particular situation. But the point is that if after earthquake, there is a lot of awareness created about NDT, because NDT was the only kind of way where you can understand about the remaining life estimate, specifically after such calamities. So after earthquake, there is a lot of awareness for NDT instruments. Same way, sometimes certain NDT instruments are used in QC of manufacturing units of castables and electrodes. Not only concrete, but there are other applications also, such as manufacturing of castables and electrodes. For example, graphite rod manufacturing company like HEG, they are using ultrasonic pulse velocity meter to check the homogeneity of that graphite rod. And there in the assembly line, they have modified the instrument in such a manner that they have installed the instrument in their assembly line of the graphite rod manufacturing, and they are using it. So straight away, there are different NDT techniques, and we are going to talk about most prevalent techniques. Very easy, people also know. So we are going to talk quite briefly about those range, but I'm quite kind of thrilled, or rather excited, and I'm very keen to discuss about the enhanced NDT techniques, which we are going to talk. And those are really interesting kind of technology, and very good with vast application, very versatile. So normal rebound hammer, you all know about the rebound hammer. This is the rebound, classic picture of rebound hammer, where you apply the rebound hammer, and it gives the surface hardness, and surface hardness will be correlated with compressive strength, and you get the compressive strength. Right? Very simple, very easy, very basic instrument. Anybody can operate, anybody can give the result. So this is some of the pictures of rebound hammer test. Same way, I was also earlier doing this kind of testing. I was also part of this kind of consultancy work. See, here we are doing a rebound hammer test in an aqueduct, right? So what is rebound hammer test? It is basically the rebound hammer is the name, classic name is Smith rebound hammer, because it was invented by a Swiss engineer called Ernst Smith, and that's how the name comes. It is the most used NDT instrument for concrete inspection, because concrete structure, whenever you talk about concrete structure, the first term or first physical parameter which will come to your mind is strength. And strength you will get idea. Now mark my word, listen to me and listen me hard. You will get some idea about the compressive strength of the concrete structure through rebound hammer. Now some idea, I'm using the term. Why? We'll discuss. So how it does, it imparts a known energy to the surface, and strength of the surface is then estimated from the rebound value, which you get through rebound hammer with respect to surface hardness of the surface of that particular concrete structure. So it correlates the surface hardness to the compressive strength. So it is for compressive strength estimation only. It is the estimation, only estimation. That's why I put it in red color, and should be used in combination with concrete core extraction to be more accurate. Because as I said, why we require to be more accurate? Because straight away, without core extraction combination, the compressive strength which you will get through rebound hammer will not be accurate. That's why you need to have the combination of core to get the compressive strength results more accurate. So same way, different impact energies, because it is the impact, right? Impact on the surface. So impact energy comes into the picture, and with different impact energies for different surfaces available in as I said, electronics and software development is happening. So now we have normal, digital, as well as live option. What is live, we'll discuss later. Now there is a codal provision. We have IS code for rebound hammer, and that this is the IS code. It is IS 13311 part 2 1992. So this is normal rebound hammer. Now here I have written that it should be used in combination with concrete core extraction. Now this is the core extraction, right? An operator is taking core from the wall, concrete wall, and he is taking core from the bottom slab, right? This is how the core looks, and this is how that particular the place or location from where the core is extracted. This is the core test. Again, core extraction from the earlier rebound hammer test location. It is the aqueduct. Now, a rebound hammer. What is the rebound hammer graph? Now, what we do in core extraction. See, and first we need to understand what we do in rebound hammer. What we do, the rebound hammer, through rebound hammer, we receive a particular rebound number. Now we correlate that rebound number with the help of a graph pasted on the graph on the rebound hammer body, and through that graph we get the compressive strength. Now that is the standard thing. People always do that, but this is not accurate. It is not accurate thing. So that's why what we should do, we should apply a hammer at a particular location, right? We will get some rebound value. Okay, no problem. Then we should take the core from that particular location only, from where we hit the hammer, where we applied the hammer. Okay, we take the core, we test the core in a compression testing machine. Same way in laboratory, what we do, we get a particular compressive strength with that particular core sample at the location where we have applied the hammer, right? Now we should do this kind of exercise for 4, 5, 6 locations. So you will have a rebound value of that particular location. For example, location A, where you have a rebound value with hammer. Then at location A with core, you have a particular compressive strength. So for A, you have rebound value and a compressive strength. Then B, rebound value, compressive strength. Same way A, B, C, D, E, F, G, at least 6, 7. So for that particular structure, you should refer the graph which you will generate with A, B, C, D, E, F, G results, rather than using the graph which is pasted on the rebound hammer body. And if you refer that particular graph which you generate after core extraction, will give you the exact compressive strength. Now this is very, very vital. People are sometimes reluctant to do this exercise, because this exercise will, of course, it will add to the cost as well as the time as well as the efforts, right? So, but rebound hammer test, one thing we should understand that rebound hammer test should be done in combination with core extraction test. And but again, rebound hammer you cannot replace because there are certain advantages. It is very quick test, right? Very easy to operate, very easy to understand also, and easy access. Easily you can access the difficult areas considering the size, shape, and the weight of this particular instrument, rebound hammer. You can easily you can easily access to the difficult areas, right? Again, but it is the limitations. What is the limitations? Strength estimation only, no, not so accurate. If you use the rebound hammer without core extraction, the strength estimation would be with the accuracy of 15 to 20%, which is no good, right? So it is there. Influence of test condition, type of cement, type of aggregate. If your concrete is with 45 mm, 50 mm aggregate, the surface hardness will be high and the compressive strength will be high. Same if the aggregate is in small in size, the compressive strength, you will get compressive strength quite low. Type of surface, if the surface is wet, less hard surface, you will get low rebound value and accordingly low rebound or low compressive strength. If the surface is carbonation makes the surface very hard. So if your surface is carbonated, right, it will give you high rebound value because of the surface is very hard, because of the carbonation. Surface is hard, high rebound value, high compressive strength. And impact, if you are impacting on a void, if there is a void immediately after the surface, you will get low rebound value and low compressive strength. If you apply the hammer at the edge of the structure of the column or beam, it will give you low compressive strength, low rebound value, low compressive strength. So that's why they are saying that at least you have to, while operating, applying the hammer, at least you have to move 25-30 mm away from the edge so that you can get the correct rebound value and correct compressive strength. So the point which I'm trying to say is these are the test conditions which you should consider because this will affect your compressive test results, and you should be aware about this kind of influencing parameters which you should keep while giving the conclusion or giving the report. Next instrument is ultrasonic pulse velocity test. Same way, it is very normal, very simple instrument. Just a minute. Yeah, normal ultrasonic instrument where there is a probe. Generally, as per IS code, you use 54 kilohertz probe and 54 kilohertz probe, and one of the probes is receiver transmitter probe, and one of the probes is receiver probe. Transducer, you can say probe or whatever word you can say, and the sound waves will travel from transmitter probe to receiver probe through the concrete structure, through the concrete element, and it will give you the velocity. And mind you, this instrument doesn't give you the velocity, it gives you the time only, right? Time. But you have the distance between two probes, and that is the distance. You can measure that distance between two probes. So you have time, you have that distance, you can calculate the velocity, which instrument does on its own. So that way you can get the velocity. On the basis of the velocity value, you can judge about the concrete state of the concrete structure, whether it is in good condition or it is in bad condition, based on the velocity value, that is meter per second. Yeah. What is the application? It is the uniformity of the concrete. The application is uniformity of the concrete. You can check whether there is any cavity or crack inside the concrete surface, or you can measure the crack depth also. Crack depth also, there is question mark. Can we measure the crack depth? We'll discuss later. Concrete strength, again question mark. See, nowadays, as there is research going on about correlating the compressive strength with velocity of the concrete, right? That is the pulse velocity. So but still, now there are difference of opinions. Sometimes people say that velocity and concrete strength, those are two different parameters and which cannot be correlated. But some people are saying that no, that there can be some correlation. But still, we do not have the kind of do not have the complete correlation in this particular between these two parameters. But probably we don't know after 5 or 7 years down the line, we may have such kind of correlation, but right now, no. The point which I'm trying to say is, in case of M10 grade concrete, where M10 means it is 100 kg per cm square concrete. If very well compacted, very well executed concrete, your velocity value will be very high because it gives the uniformity of the concrete. But since it is M10 grade concrete, the compressive strength will be less. Same way, if your M40 or M45 grade concrete, if it is not well compacted concrete, not well executed concrete pouring work done, then it will give you less low pulse velocity. But since it is M45 grade concrete, overall it should be high compressive strength concrete, right? So as per my understanding and my personal opinion, as per my exposure to this particular range, I am of a view that both the things are separate and cannot be correlated. But don't know, maybe after some years there may be some correlation. Crack depth, can you measure the crack depth? Yeah, you can measure the crack depth with ultrasonic pulse velocimeter, but there are some preconditions. If the crack depth is if the crack is absolutely vertical from the surface, then you can measure the crack depth, because we don't know, crack can be inclined, can go in any direction. But so if it is vertical, then only you can get the crack depth, otherwise no. That's why I have put the question mark. So these are the applications. As build verification, you can do the integrity assessment of any concrete structure, or material characterization can also be done with ultrasonic pulse velocity measurement. So it is famously known as Pandit. I mean, the abbreviation is portable ultrasonic non-destructive integrity tester, and it is most common entity method after rebound hammer. And as I said, it gives the time, and ultimately you measure the velocity. And velocity value gives the idea about the homogeneity of the section being measured. And vertical crack depth can also be measured. There is a codal provision. It is IS 13311 part 1 1992, and different frequency transducers are available for different measurement depth. How? This is how it works. Now we should go a little bit back to our school days, and we should understand about the wavelength. What is wavelength? For different waves, you have a particular wavelength, and there is a frequency connected to that wavelength. What is frequency? Frequency is cycles per second, right? So that is the physics. Now, in case of low frequency, you have long wavelength, but less resolution. In case of high frequency, you have short wavelength. Is high resolution. So, in case of let us put an example of 54 and 24. 54 kilohertz, high frequency, right? Shorter wavelength, right? But since it is a shorter wavelength, it cannot travel to the longer distance. It cannot travel, but it will give you the high resolution, right? So, and in case of lower frequency, for example, 24 kilohertz transducer, it will have the longer wavelength, so it will travel to a great distance, more distance than 54 kilohertz, but the resolution will be less. So what does it mean? It means that frequency is inversely proportionate to the depth. So lower frequency, more depth penetration. Higher frequency, less depth penetration. So that's why it is saying that frequency is inversely proportionate to the depth, and it means high frequency, less depth penetration, but high resolution. What do we mean by high resolution? It means that in case of ultrasonic pulse velocimeter, if you are using 24 kilohertz transducer, which is lower frequency transducer, you may skip some small anomalies, some small cracks, some small voids. You may skip. The instrument may not detect those small cavities or small voids, but At the same time, it can go up to the longer distance. Now, in case of higher frequency transducer, for example, 54 kilohertz or 150 kilohertz, you will not get the more depth penetration, but it will definitely detect small cavities. Now, there is no thumb rule. Now, someone definitely will ask, what is the frequency and what is the size of cavity we can detect? No, there is no thumb rule. It is just trial and error you have to make for a particular site, and you can arrive to kind of a conclusion for that particular site only. So, but this is the case that high frequency, less depth penetration, high resolution, lower frequency, more depth penetration, but very low resolution. So there are different testing methods also. Direct, so transducer on both sides, most accurate method. Semi-direct, because it is not possible every time to get the access of both the side, right? Because you don't know about the concrete structure which is to be tested. So based on the application, based on the accessibility, if you have got the direct transmission accessibility, it is the perfect, accurate, most accurate method. Or else you can have semi-direct or indirect. So direct transmission, most accurate, semi-direct or indirect transmission, low velocity. So they say, I mean, people are saying there is, again, this is the thumb rule. There is no kind of document of this particular thing, but they say that if you do not have the access for direct transmission, and if you are using semi-direct or indirect transmission, whatever the velocity you get, you have to increase little bit. How much? That can be decided after site verification only. So there are a lot of human kind of intervention connected to this particular thing, but that you have to make based on the application, based on the site conditions. So ultrasonic pulse velocity meter, how it is being tested? See, in picture 1, they are doing direct transmission. In picture 1, 2, direct transmission, and picture 3 and 4, they are using indirect transmission, because next side or next surface or next other side is not available. So they have to kind of make some compromise, because at site everything is not as per your requirement, and you have to do some compromise. Again, this is ultrasonic pulse velocity test, again in tunnel, again in aqueduct only. So what is the figure? So if you get 4,000 meter per second, it is good concrete. 3,000 meter per second, it is poor concrete. Again, if there is void, again 3,500 meter per second. But this is just the idea that if there is any crack, it would be, and the concrete condition is poor, your velocity would be low. Don't go by the number, just try to understand the idea that in case of good concrete, higher velocity; in case of poor concrete, honeycombing, voids, cracks, it will be lower velocity. Then cover meter and rebar location, because in case of reinforcement concrete structure, you need to understand where the reinforcement has been located and what is the concrete cover, because cover plays very important role in protecting the reinforcement, and that's why cover should be with a particular value and to protect the reinforcement, and that's why concrete cover is important, and that's how you can check through concrete cover meter. This is how it used. There is a probe to be put on the surface, and you will get the reinforcement steel location, and at that particular location, on that particular steel reinforcement bar, what is the concrete cover value this instrument gives. So this is how it does. Okay, this is the probe which you have to move on the concrete surface, and as soon as you will come near to the reinforcement bar, it will give you a beep sound. Also, it gives the light, and through which you can understand that now I am exactly on top of that reinforcement bar, which is the location, and on that particular location, what is the concrete cover. So one of the application is not only to check the concrete cover, but reinforcement bars, but concrete core location also. As I said, in rebound hammer test, you need to take out the core, but from where you should take out the core? You should avoid the reinforcement. Wherever you are taking the core, you should not cut the reinforcement, right? So you have to identify an area where there is no steel bar. You will not kind of face the steel bar while taking the core. So to find that location, first you have to do the rebar location test. So you can finalize the location where there is no reinforcement, and you can take out the core from there. So that's also one of the applications. So rebar location, what is the application? Rebar location, cover measurement, diameter estimation. Yes? Question mark. It is no. I mean, so what? Finding the coring location. Why diameter estimation is with question mark and with the red color? Because if you are using this particular instrument for measuring the concrete cover to locate the reinforcement bar, no problem. Perfect. But if your main objective is the reinforcement bar diameter calculation or estimation, no, this is not the instrument. With a particular, with some precondition, it may give you the bar diameter, it not always. So it is an additional facility through this instrument that you can estimate the bar diameter, but not always. So whenever you test this particular, this particular test, the prime objective should not be the bar diameter estimation, right? It may give, it may not give. So because this instrument is not for that particular application. Rebar location, cover measurement, perfect. Again, finding the core location, yeah, you can do that, you should do that. And why the, what is the principle? It is the principle what this instrument does. This instrument senses or rather detects the magnetic environment of that particular reinforcement bar. Being a metal item, reinforcement, it has got some magnetic flux, magnetic area. This instrument detects that, and with the increase or decrease in the volume of the magnetic flux, it gives you the reinforcement location. Very simple principle, and basically it's nothing but the concrete scanning technology, you can say. Most accurate method if preconditions met. And what are the preconditions? That maximum depth penetration with this particular instrument is not more than 175, 185 mm. And it is also based on the size of the reinforcement bar. If reinforcement bar size is around 6 mm, that it may not go beyond 60, 70 mm also, right? And if the reinforcement bar size is around 40 mm, 32 mm, 40 mm steel, it may give you the location as well as concrete cover more than even 250 mm also, because more size, higher size of reinforcement bar, the magnetic area or the magnetic flux will be high and easy for an instrument to capture it, to detect it. That's why it gives you the location as well as the concrete cover, even in case of more than 185 mm. So as I have already written, high bar diameter, more depth penetration. And so rebar location, cover measurement, yes. Rebar diameter measurement, no, not possible every time. And we do not have IS code here. It is DIN standard as well as British standard code. So how you are going to see, they are saying that you have to move the probe on the concrete surface in X and Y direction. Means you have to kind of do the grid survey, because this probe will detect the reinforcement if it is moving perpendicular to the bar alignment. If it is moving on the same direction of the bar alignment, it will not give you the location or the concrete cover. So that's why they are saying that you have to move in X as well as Y direction, so that all kinds of bar alignment will be detected. So bar alignment should be perpendicular to the probe moving direction, like this. You can see very well that this particular probe, I have made it clear through arrow. This is the arrow, and you are moving in this direction. Bar alignment is this way. So you have to cut. You have to cut the reinforcement bar, then it will give you the reinforcement location as well as concrete cover. And now with the development in electronics, you can get the exact reinforcement alignment display also on the instrument display. Reinforcement alignment position. So you can check the not only the concrete cover, but you can also get the spacing. Sometimes spacing is very important. If you want to check whether the contractor has put 10 numbers of bar or just 8, 7, And by increasing the spacing, you can do that with this particular instrument. Next one is concrete corrosion analysis instrument, which is the working principle is half shell potential, right? It is used to check the probability of the corrosion for the reinforcement bar, right? In that particular concrete structure. So it will give the probability of the corrosion of the reinforcement bar through the principle that is half shell potential. What it does, it measures the potential of an embedded or reinforcement bar in the concrete surface with respect to, in relation to, with reference to the reference half shell. Half shell is nothing but the silver chloride or copper sulfate electrode on the concrete surface. So there are two connections. One connection is to be made on the concrete surface, on the reinforcement bar with clamp kind of arrangement. Second connection is on the concrete surface with electrode, and it gives you the half shell potential difference, that is in millivolt. And through that particular value, you can kind of have the probability, you can get the probability of corrosion of reinforcement bar on that particular surface. So what is the exact location? The location where you have put the electrode. The electrode, below that electrode, whatever the reinforcement bar probability you can get. So this is how it does. There are two connections. One connection is with reinforcement bar. Second connection is on the electrode to be put on the concrete surface. So what are the major causes of corrosion? It is chlorination and carbonation. So in case of coastal area where the concrete structure is subjected to the chloride environment, it is more likely that the corrosion is very much likely. Corrosion of reinforcement is very much likely. And if the concrete cover is very less, because chloride ion will start penetrating into the concrete surface, and if the concrete cover is less, it will definitely reach to that reinforcement bar and start reinforcing bar. The corrosion will start. But if the concrete cover is enough, then chloride ion will take more time to get penetrated, and you can kind of prolong the corrosion probability or the process. So this is how it does. There is one connection they have shown. The second connection, the second cable will go to the reinforcement to connect to the reinforcing bar. So half shell reference electrode is passed over the surface of the concrete, and potential voltage difference is recorded or measured. And this particular electrode, is the copper sulfate or silver chloride. This is how it does. This is the here they have done the connection with the reinforcing bar, and this is the electrode. This is reinforcing bar connection, and this is the electrode. This is electrode, right? So it is half shell potential measurement instrument. Sometimes people say half shell potential measurement instrument or corrosion analyzing instrument, whatever. It is standardized by ASTM C876 and BS1881, and this is how you can have the probability. If the potential is more positive than minus 20 volt, then greater than 90% probability of no corrosion. There will not be any corrosion. Probability of 90% of no corrosion. If that value is between minus 20 to minus 35, then it's quite uncertain to say that there is corrosion or not. And if it is more negative than minus 35 volt, then it is highly probable, highly likely that there will be corrosion. Greater probability of 90% probability of the corrosion. Other NDT techniques. These are the standard NDT techniques people know, but some of techniques people may not know. Those are resistivity test, and this is the resistance of any media against corrosion. Now people sometimes get confused between resistivity test and corrosion test. See, both tests are saying about the corrosion of reinforcement, but the principle is different. See, corrosion analyzing instrument half shell potential difference test is gives you the probability of the corrosion of reinforcement bar directly. This instrument has nothing to do with the reinforcement bar straight away, I would say, but this instrument will give you the resistance of any media against corrosion. So you are checking the resistance of concrete media in concrete surface. In case of RCC, the media is concrete, right? So this instrument will give you the media resistance of concrete against corrosion. So with a particular value, what will happen with reinforcement hidden behind this particular media? This is what this instrument or this test tells. So you have the rho, they call it rho, kilo ohm cm is the unit of resistivity, rho, and this is the standard. So with a particular kilo ohm cm value, what is the probability of corrosion behind that particular media, right? So this is, we need to understand, it has nothing to do with the directly with the corrosion of the reinforcement bar, but the resistance of media, how this particular media will protect the reinforcement bar against corrosion. This is what this instrument tells. Sorry. Then we have test of carbonation depth. The measurement of carbonation depth by using phenolphthalein solution. What this phenolphthalein solution does, you spray a solution on the concrete core, and this solution will reach to a particular depth with a particular color, right? And the distance it travels or it covers with that particular color, in color, and specifically that color is pink, you can say that this is the carbonated surface. So your concrete cover is same or less than this carbonation depth, that pink color covered area, then it is very much likely that reinforcement bar behind this particular concrete cover distance, same as pink color distance, your reinforcement bar must be corroded. So this is how they understand the carbonation depth. Same way, it is chloride penetration depth. It is RCPT, they call it as rapid chloride permeability test. It again, as this instrument gives you the idea about the resistance of concrete against the penetration of chloride. So specifically in coastal area, you can use this particular instrument to understand the corrosion, understand the resistance of concrete against the chlorination. And chlorination is one of the major causes of corrosion, more than even carbonation. So this is how it kind of gives you the idea with a particular value as per ASTM code. What is the probability of the penetration of chloride ion to the concrete to the reinforcement bar? Now this is the interesting enhancement in technology. Now we know about the normal technology, as we discussed. Now there are enhancements happening globally, and to make the instrument more versatile, more user friendly, and more application area can be covered. So first is pulse echo. What is pulse echo? Pulse echo is nothing but the ultrasonic test only, same technology as normal UPV, but single side access. As I said, that in case of UPV, direct transmission with both side access will give you correct result. But in reality, it is not possible. Now, in case of tunnel, you have only one side access. You cannot go to this next side. Even in case of dam, you cannot go to the next side of dam section and do the testing. So you have only one side access. So how we should do the homogeneity test, which is possible in UPV with one side access? Pulse echo is the solution. So it is the same technology as normal UPV, but with single side access. Large area scanning is possible because it is the, in case of UPV, it's very difficult for you to cover large area because you have to every time put the probe on the either side, and it gives you the its time taking effort. Here only one side, so you can in no time you can cover the large scanning area. And again, depth penetration is very high, right? With single side, in case of UPV, in indirect transmission, you cannot get any depth transmission because of this particular technology, that is pulse echo. With single side access, the depth penetration is quite high. This is how it works, right? It is the concrete slab, and pulse echo, you have to put the transducer on single side on same surface, and you will get the, you will do the testing. This is how it looks. This is the multi-channel transducer. In case of UPV, you have single channel 54, single channel only 54. It's a receiver transmitter, one channel. Here it is multi-channel transducer. So now you can see, okay, here you see some of the points, right? There are some of the points. It is 3 into 8, right? 3 into 8. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 into 3. So total there are 24 points. And each point, as I said, in UPV, you have receiver transmission and transmitter probe and receiver probe, or receiver transmitter or transmission transmitter. Okay, so receiver transducer or receiving transducer or transmission transducer. Here, every point, every channel will work as the transmitter antenna or transmitter probe, and every point or every channel will work as the receiver antenna. So this kind of array data you will have. So each transducer works as the transmitter and receiver. Multiple transmission, you can imagine there is multiple. In UPV, there is only one transmission. A wave will travel from transmitter to receiver. Only one wave, only one transmission. Here, multiple waves, multiple transmissions happen, and multiple receipts happen. And that's why you can have the complete scanning of that particular area. You must have heard the word tomography. This is where it comes. This is the pulse echo tomography, you can see. This is how it works. Now you just see, you are moving, you are getting below, you are getting the result. This is A scan. What is A scan and what is B scan? I'll explain, but just see, we are moving and we are creating an image below, right? We are moving, the image is being created. We are moving, image is being created, right? So this is how. Now, what is this? Now, this is the back wall, end of reflection, from where the waves are coming back. From a particular point, the waves are returning. Now, there is a continuous image from a continuous point or continuous location from where waves are returning. So what is that? That is the end of reflection. End of reflection means waves are coming. So it is the back wall. So this particular instrument is fantastic instrument to check the back wall. How it is and what is the significance, what is the importance? You can check the thickness of the concrete. Now, if in case of tunnels, specifically when you do not have the other side access, if a customer is, or if a contractor is claiming that my tunnel lining is 35 centimeters, sir, you can check. You can check accurately, correctly with this particular instrument, which is not possible in UPV. That's why they are saying that it is enhanced technology. Not only the back wall detection, but also it gives you the location of the crack or void, right? Which is possible in UPV, but here you can get the exact location. Again, now you can see a white spot. Here it is a white spot, right? And this is the back wall. Now just check how it will check. It will show. See this. There is a reflection here. It is the continuous reflection from this point, right? Here the reflection is deferred. It is from different location. So you can say that from this particular distance, there is a void, right? So this is how this instrument works. And this is pulse echo measuring principle. This is the object or anomaly or cavity, whatever, but you can have the object location from this particular instrument. So this is the defect detection. Now, Pandit pulse echo instrument, where we have, I mean, it is the brand name. Just don't go with the brand name. Just understand the technology. So here we have honeycombing, we have voids also, and we have some of the reinforcement also, right? And this is the image how it looks. This is, you have this kind of object image, you have this kind of voids now, and reinforcement location is also possible with Pulse Echo. Now listen to me and listen me hard. You can, with some limitation, you can get some idea about the reinforcement with Pulse Echo, which is not possible in UPV. But as I am already saying, Pulse Echo is not the instrument for reinforcement location, but with some limitation, you can do that. Basically, this is again the same UPV. You can check the voids, you can check the cavities, but in addition to that, you can get the back wall reflection. Same way, you can get the velocity also. So there is no problem. So right, thickness measurement, as I said, see, this is a concrete block where in center it is 50 centimeter, on either side it is 40 centimeter. So you can get this kind of image, which clearly showing that variation in thickness. Center it is 50 centimeter, either side it is 40 centimeters. So it is very clearly showing the variation in the thickness of that particular element. Same tunnel application. See, this is the back wall reflection. This is the back wall reflection. Here, because of the mountain, you cannot get the back wall. You cannot go to that side. You cannot have the access. So there, Pulse Echo is the only solution. In addition to that, there is one more instrument called GPR. So GPR is nothing but the ground penetration radar. See, ground penetration radar is very kind of versatile instrument. What do I mean by versatility? Is it has got application soil stratigraphy, forensics, archaeology, utility location, and one of the applications is concrete evaluation, which we are going to talk today in this particular session. Otherwise, GPR, you can use GPR for soil stratigraphy, soil forensics, archaeology, utility location, concrete evaluation. But we are going to check about the discuss about the concrete evaluation only. So GPR can be used for concrete evaluation. And how does it look? And what is the now? See, in case of you must have kind of observed one particular thing. In case of rebound hammer, what you get? A number, rebound value, a number, right? Number 25, 35, 45, whatever number. In case of UPV, what you get? Number. What is number? 4,000 meter per second, 5,000 meter per second, 3,000 meter per second, 2,500 meters per second, whatever number. In rebar locator, what you get? Number. 25 mm cover, 30 mm cover, 40 mm cover, right? But in Pulse Echo, what you get? You get image, right? You get image, back wall thickness image, a back wall image, so you can measure the thickness. Then cavity location, where you get the image. Same as in GPR also, you get this kind of images. Now, just since we are talking about images, just imagine yourself, if someone wants to give a conclusion or gives the kind of decision based on a number, very easy. Okay, 25 is higher, then you can say anything less than 25 is lower. You can give the decision based on an image. If someone wants to give you the decision, very difficult. You have to have a particular amount of expertise. In case of Pulse Echo, though you get some velocity, but also on addition to that, you get some images, and based on those images, you have to give some conclusion. Same way, in case of GPR also, you get such kind of images. Now, what is the image? It is the hyperbola. Hyperbola images like this. Now, in case of concrete, when you run the GPR on concrete surface, you get the hyperbolas, and each hyperbola represents each reinforcement bar. Same way, after some analysis, you get this kind of alignment, bar alignment. But again, there is no number. The number which you get, though you will get definitely a number, but instrument doesn't give the number. The analysis gives you the number. So after the testing, the instrument will do some analysis, software analysis, inbuilt software analysis, and will give you the number. But the basic data which you get is not the number, the image. It is high frequency electromagnetic EM reflection. In case of UVV, it is sound waves. Same way in case of GPR, it is electromagnetic reflection. It is radar radio detection ranging. It emits energy and records the response. Major use include civil engineering and geotechnical application. But what is the basic difference between, see, it is a scanning technology to detect the reinforcement bar. Rebar locator also scanning technology to detect the reinforcement bar. But what is the difference between these two? GPR detects metallic as well as non-metallic objects, whereas rebar locator detects only metallic. Why? But because the basic principle of rebar locator is detection of magnetic flux, whereas non-metallic object doesn't have any magnetic flux, it doesn't detect. Whereas in GPR, since it has the basic principle is electromagnetic waves, it detects metallic as well as non-metallic objects. So you can do the GPR test and you will get the data about the reinforcement bar, not only reinforcement bar, but also plastic conduits, any objects which is non-metallic, you can detect that. So that's why it is metallic as well as non-metallic objects, post-tensioning cables, live dead cables also, and air voids also. So this is how it looks. GPR detects the discontinuities of dielectric properties caused by the targets. Basically, what it detects? It detects the difference in dielectric properties. What is dielectric property? It is again a physics term. But for us, just to make it simple, different material has got different dielectric property. In case of metal, the dielectric property is different. In case of concrete, the dielectric property is around 7, 8. In case of metal, it is different. So whenever there is change in dielectric property, now if GPR waves are traveling, concrete, suddenly it is metal. Change in dielectric property, it will give you image. Concrete, plastic. Change in dielectric property, concrete to plastic, it will give you image. So if there is any change in dielectric property, means there is change in the material, it will give you the image, and that image will be in the form of hyperbola. Why it is hyperbola and how it is work? See, just a minute. How it is work? It gives you the two-way travel time, amplitude, and phase. What is phase? It is positive phase or negative phase. So this instrument will gives you the travel time, which in turn can be converted into velocity and the phase also, right? So same way, this person is speaking something and getting the echo. Same way you transmit, so it gives a sound and gets the echo. Same way it emits the electromagnetic energy or waves and gets the response. So this is how, so it records the two-way travel time, amplitude, and phase of that particular wave, whether it is positive or negative. Why positive and negative is important? Because in case of for that particular object, if the phase is positive, it is very much likely that object is metallic. And if the phase is negative, it is very much likely that particular object is non-metallic. That's why phase is important. But why it gives the hyperbola image? Now just imagine the antenna is moving. It first detects the object. It goes nearer to the object. So two-way travel time is less. First it is high, then less. Then again it is increasing. First increasing, then decreasing, then again increasing. So based on the two-way travel time, it gives you the hyperbola image. Now you must have understood the increasing and then decreasing and then again increasing, right? First increasing, then decreasing, then again increasing. Two-way travel time of reflection from that particular object, and that produces the hyperbola image. This is the basic reason behind getting the hyperbola. So this is the it estimates the location and depth of target. In case of concrete, reinforcement is the object, or pipe is the object or any conduit is the object. In case of building, normal residential or commercial building, nowadays they have this concealed wiring. So they are putting the plastic pipes inside the concrete, right, which can be detected with GPR, which cannot be detected with UPV or rebar locator. So time slice view, nowadays you have the software analysis, software upgradation, where you can get the time slice view, depth slice view, anything is possible. So if you are checking the 50 centimeter concrete block, and if you are interested in middle 20 centimeter data, you can get that particular slice horizontally, vertically, X direction, Y direction, both direction is possible. So that's how that's how the software works, and it gives you very exciting and very kind of very nice image, which is very it looks very good in with respect to the presentation. So 3D view, that's why they have written that visually it's stunning reporting. This is how it looks. You can get this kind of slices. Take out the slices and put this in your report, or you can do the analysis. So now we have just a minute. Yeah, we have 3 concrete imaging systems. We have 3 concrete imaging systems, GPR and PulseEcho for concrete imaging, and third one is rebar location. So basically, in enhancement of technology, we have 2 imaging technologies, GPR and PulseEcho. Let us kind of compare what are the applications, where it should be used, where it should be avoided. Let's compare. So you can check same concrete location, same location, same block. What are the difference in data which you receive through GPR and through PulseEcho? In case of GPR, you get the this kind of voids shown here. In case of PulseEcho also, you get this kind of voids. Now this is the cavity here. You can also see the cavity here. This is the cavity here. You can see the cavity here. So cavity wise, all the both the instruments are working more or less same. But in case of steel, the instrument works differently. Why? Now this is the difference which you should kind of check. See, GPR gives you 100% reflection of metal objects. Now, where there is reflection is more, detection is clear, right? If it doesn't reflect, that object cannot be detected. It goes beyond that particular object. It doesn't give you the detection. So if the in case of GPR, it gives 100% reflection of metal object. It means it will detect metal object very correctly, very nicely. So because of it is 100% reflection. Same way, ultrasonic 99% reflection of air gaps. Say it's 100%. So in case of PulseEcho, air gap reflection is 99% or 100%. So the detection of air gaps is more accurate than GPR, because it cannot see. So 100% reflection means it cannot see beyond that particular thing. So GPR cannot see beyond metal. Same way, ultrasonic PulseEcho cannot see beyond air gap, because 100% or 99% reflection. In GPR, 55% through air gaps. In case of ultrasonic PulseEcho, 57% through metal objects. So what does it mean? In case of reinforcement location or such kind of metal or non-metallic object detection, GPR is the instrument. In case of air gap, air void detection, PulseEcho is the instrument. Now you can check, or you can decide what is your application and how you can what instrument is best suitable for your kind of application. That can be decided if you have got this kind of clarity. So this way, GPR, concrete, steel, perfect, no problem. Ultrasonic, you may get, you may not. In case of concrete and air, GPR, you may get, you may not. But in case of PulseEcho, air gap, you will get good data. See, this is how it works. This is the back wall. So backwall detection through pulse echo, perfect. Backwall detection through GPR, so not very kind of satisfactory. Reinforcement location and detection through pulse echo, not so accurate. Reinforcement location through GPR, perfect. So this is how it works. Now again, real-time monitoring of some of the physical parameters of the concrete structure. It is the wireless sensor of concrete resistivity and temperature. So as I said, temperature and strength monitoring is possible through wireless sensor. It is basically the new technology for concrete corrosion measurement. See, we have half shell potential, resistivity, we discussed, and now third one is SEPRA, that is connectionless electrical pulse response analysis. As you must have observed that in case of corrosion monitoring, you have to make one connection to the reinforcement. In case of SEPRA, you do not have to make any connection. Straight away on the surface, you put the probe and you get the corrosion. So same instrument you can do the resistivity as well as the corrosion, but it is not the half shell potential difference, but it is through SEPRA, that is connectionless electrical pulse response analysis. See, there is only one probe here, and you get the data. Measuring sensor and tablet. Then again, this particular technology doesn't have any codal provision. So people are not still accepting this particular technology, but yeah, this technology is available and for corrosion monitoring. Then we have impact echo. What is impact echo? Impact echo is the non-destructive evaluation of concrete and masonry based on the use of impact generated stress waves that propagate through the structure and are reflected by internal force and external surface. What they do in this test, very simple, very simple way I will explain. They generate these stress waves. How? Manually they give an impact to a concrete surface through a hammer. Manually they generate a wave, and that wave will be detected or will be received by the reference sensors or by the data acquisition system or the electrodes, and based on the concrete from the impact location to that particular receiving sensor, the state of that concrete structure will give you the idea about the state of that concrete structure through which those stress waves are traveling. So in case of after generating these stress waves, if it is high frequency pitch, if that particular wave is with high frequency, it means it's a sound concrete. If those waves which are being generated through an impact generated manually, if that particular wave has got low frequency, it means it has got the poor concrete and with presence of flaw. So this is how it does. This is the instrument. This is the impact hammer through which you can generate an impact, and it will be detected by the sensor, and based on the concrete, how it travels from this particular impact location to that sensor will give you the idea about the state of that concrete structure. This is again a new technology, impact echo. So sometimes people don't know about this particular technology. Otherwise, this is also globally accepted technology, impact echo method. So same way, UPV requires, as I said, in the case of direct method, UPV requires both side access. And it's not possible to determine the depth of the anomalies. The location of the anomaly through pulse echo possible, through UPV not possible. Through impact echo it is possible. This is based on monitoring the reflected stress waves, and on that basis obtains the information about the depth of that internal flaw or crack or void or interface from which it is getting reflected, or the thickness of the solid member. Other NDT technologies, infrared thermography. These techniques for locating near surface defects by measuring the surface temperature. So in case of live wire, because of that wire is live, there is a change in the temperature, and it gives you the location of live wire, as well as if there is any leakage. if there is any leakage, the surface will be with low temperature and it will give you that particular area detection. Other advanced technologies are acoustic emission. This is the, see, basically what it does. They just embed the sensor, put the sensor, and when there is any, if that particular structure is under any stress or subjected to any stress, for example, in case of bridge, if a train is moving on that bridge, there is some internal cracks happening. Internal cracks because of that moving vehicle, moving load, dynamic load, because it's moving, there is some crack happening, which is not kind of harmful. Up to a particular extent, it is not harmful, but you need to monitor the noises created by those cracks. And if that particular extent of that noise is beyond to a certain limit, then it is an alarming situation. So this is what it does. This is the non-invasive, non-destructive method that analyzes the noise created when materials deform or fracture. Advantages and limitations of NDT techniques. Advantages: QC is possible during and post-construction stage, and that too on field. What is the actual condition on field? You will come to know only through NDT. Of course, it is quite fast and quite user-friendly. And again, considering the size and shape of the instrument, difficult site area access is also very much possible. And testing without permanent damage, because it is non-destructive testing instrument, so there is no damage. Large area testing is possible because it's quite fast. So you can, in no time, you can scan large area. And introduction of new technology like AI, that is artificial intelligence, or cloud data storing is possible. So you can even do the analysis remotely. If your operator is doing a particular test at a particular location, you can transfer those data through cloud to a remote location, and expert sitting at a remote location, different location, some kilometers away, he can also do the analysis and then again transfer the report to the operator. So this kind of thing is possible with advancement or development in electronics and software, or this kind of cloud data storing or artificial intelligence thing. But again, there are some limitations. It cannot replace destructive method. Still, destructive method gives you the idea, correct idea about the physical parameters. Not as accurate as destructive method. Why? Because still we need to have the expert to analyze the NDT data, because there are a lot of conditions which influence the testing procedure, and a lot of, for example, GP
So there is a connection issue. So sir is trying to reconnect. So please bear with us.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I don't know. I was disconnected, or probably I don't know from where.
Yes,
I
sir.
leave. From
Maybe
where?
it's a network connectivity issue. Now it's
Okay,
okay.
probably. But now,
We can-
yeah, I'm just at the end of my presentation. It is the last slide. In fact, I was
Okay,
just
sir.
discussing about the advantages, and then at that time I realized that the connection was lost, and I was not the part of that particular this particular session.
Yes, sir. Now it's visible. Okay.
So these are the advantages I just discussed. Quality control is possible during and post construction stage, during construction as well as post construction. Then again, it's quite fast and user friendly. And of course, considering the size and shape of the instrument, difficult site area access is also possible. Right, you can reach to any particular point, which is not possible always in case of other than non-destructive testing instruments. And since it is non-destructive, testing without permanent damage to the structure is also possible. Large area testing is possible. And now introduction of new technology, which makes possible that if an operator is doing a testing work at a particular location, and same time he can real-time data can be transferred to a particular other location remotely through cloud data storing facility, and that expert sitting at other location can do the analysis and again transfer the report to the operator side. So I mean, the time can be saved, and this kind of facility always makes the instrument more user friendly. But again, it cannot replace the destructive method, because destructive method is easy to understand. It gives you number. See, as I said, in case of NDT, sometimes it doesn't give you any number. It gives you some images. On the basis of images, you have to kind of arrive to a conclusion, which is very difficult, right? So again, people still rely more on destructive method, not as accurate as destructive method, and still we have IS codal provision only for two instruments, that is rebound hammer and UPV. Otherwise, no codal provision is there. So sometimes people do not kind of accept NDT testing data and the report because no codal provision. Awareness is again limited, and issue of interpretation of data. Still, we need to have a people who should understand the data analysis and do the interpretation. Sometimes people don't understand, and and it's very difficult to get the data accepted also. Skilled operator is required because there are certain preconditions under which this NDT testing work should be done. So that's why skilled operator is required. And uncomfortable field testing condition, yeah, that's sometimes happen because you are standing or sitting on a scaffolding and doing a rebound hammer test or a UPV test. So that makes the field testing condition more difficult, little bit difficult, I would say, and sometimes unsafe also. So you have to kind of take care of all these things. But otherwise, if I conclude, NDT is the need of era, right? And considering the critical, considering the time is critical, and the you need to kind of complete the test, or you need to give some conclusion report or conclusion about the structure, about the health of that particular structure. NDT is the only available method. So that's why we need to concentrate and focus more and more on NDT. And there are a lot of NDT instruments. We covered very less considering the time constraint, but we need to explore more and more in this particular field. So with that, thank you very much. Thanks for your attention. And if any question, if you want to ask, I am always there to answer your questions to the best of my knowledge. Okay. So I'm quite, it's 4 only. So I finished my session in whatever the time given. So that's good. I could finish it. So any questions, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So it was a really very amazing session. So
Thank you.
related to the non-destructive testing. So there are some couple of questions we are getting from the number of participants. So there is a first question from the Dr. Lavish Pombani, sir. That question is, core test can be performed anytime or based on the results of the rebound hammer test. Like if rebound test shows the weakness, isn't core test risky in that case?
No, core test can be performed anytime. But there are two things. Because in core test, we have to understand two things. First, we have to avoid the reinforcement. Right? Sometimes nowadays the core machine is so effective that it can cut the reinforcement also. And if it cuts the reinforcement, then there is the structural issue. There may be some structural issue. So you can cut the core anytime, no problem. But we kind of suggest that before taking out the core, because there will be some hole also. The hole will also be created, which is to be grouted, and make it as it was earlier before taking the core. So that grouting has to be done. So the suggestion is that you can take the core anytime. You should take the core, and to be supported with rebound hammer test, there is no other alternative. But before taking out the core, you have to mark the location where you avoid the reinforcement. And at the same time, we have to take, or the consult, or the core test operator, or the testing people should take the prior approval, or rather should be brought to the notice of structural engineer that we are taking core in this particular section, this many cores at this location. Otherwise, you can take the core as long as it doesn't cut the reinforcement, no problem.
Okay, sir. There is one more question from the Professor Parth Lakhani, sir. He has a question regarding UPV test. And question is that does wet outer surface can affect the UPV readings?
Of course. In fact, UPV, it doesn't affect the UPV test result. It doesn't affect the UPV test result, but it will make the UPV test more accurate. How? See, in case of UPV, you put the probe. Now you can see my hands, right? Here there is one probe. Here it is another probe. So there is a wave should travel from this location to this location, right? So the wave should straight away go from this probe to this probe. It should not run away. So there should not be any air gap from with, now this is surface, this is probe, you put the probe like this. So there should not be any air gap between the probe surface and the concrete surface, right? So they apply the gel. To avoid the air gap, to fill the air gap, so that the sound wave will straight away start from that probe and will enter in that concrete surface. But sometimes if you do not have the gel available at site, you can wet the surface. This is what they say. So you can put the water on the surface and then you apply the probe, so that water will ensure that there will not be any air, and the waves will start traveling from the probe and directly to the concrete, and it will go through the concrete. So water will not affect any velocity value, but it will definitely make the test more effective. So you can use water, no problem. So or rather I give you the answer straight away. If the surface is wet, can we do the UPV test? Yes, you can do the UPV test, no problem.
Okay, sir. One more question regarding UPV test only. That UPV cannot able to detect the velocity in an indirect method for the slab in many of the cases. So what can be the causes of the same?
See, it can, so you don't get the velocity in case of indirect transmission, right? This is what you are asking. You don't get the velocity, correct?
Yes, sir.
See, you cannot get the velocity, is not possible, honestly speaking. Because see, even if you don't get the velocity, it means that your waves are not traveling from transmitter to receiver antenna. The waves are kind of running away from, and it doesn't reach to that receiver antenna. That is the only cause that you don't get the velocity. Now, if you don't get the velocity in indirect method, you will not get the velocity even in direct method also. Because not getting the velocity, it means that the waves not reaching to the other side or the other probe or the receiver probe. Now, not reaching the waves, not reaching to that other receiver probe, it has nothing to do with the method. Indirect method, direct method, semi-direct method, whatever is the method, waves not reaching to that receiver probe, the causes can be other things other than method, right? There may be many voids. The concrete might be highly kind of honeycombed concrete inside, or hugely void, having huge voids inside. There are a lot of anomalies inside and other things. And because of those things, you don't get the velocity. It has nothing to do with the indirect, direct, or semi-direct method. Okay. So, and now coming back to at your particular location, if you are not getting any value or any velocity in that particular location through indirect method, there may be some issue with that particular location, in between that particular probes. Now, in case of indirect method, that Pythagoras theorem you have to put, and you have to put you check the distance and you enter the distance, but you should get the time. How you get the time? The wave should travel to that particular other side, which is not happening in your case. It may not be the method, cannot be the cause of waves not reaching to other side. The causes will be different only. Method is not the cause. It's not possible, right?
Okay, sir. There is one more question from the Dr. Mazhar Dhankot, sir. That is there any way in which we can numerically correlate the result of the UPV and rebound hammer?
Honestly speaking, my kind of answer, to the best of my knowledge, no, it is not possible, because both the things are different. Site specific can be possible. It can be site specific for a particular structure, for a particular velocity. This is the rebound value and this is the compressive strength. It might be possible for site specific, but honestly speaking, if I talk personally, and if you ask my personal view, I would not do that, because both the things are different, and I would not even think of trying to correlate both the things, because for me, both the things are different. At this particular time, this is my opinion. Probably, as I have already said in my presentation, probably 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, probably, if research is going on and if they come up with some kind of correlation, and if I go through that particular study material or that particular reference material, then I might get convinced at that time. But right now, I'm not at all convinced. Honestly speaking, sir, my personal view, that both the things are different and should not be correlated.
Okay, sir. So is there any question from the participant? Okay, fine. So overall, sir, it was a very amazing session. All the methodology with a different instrumentation and with good examples, which will be connected to the field application. So thank you so much, sir, for sparing your valuable time on behalf of Marwari Education Foundation. Again, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. In fact, we should be thankful to you for providing us this particular opportunity. And one thing I would like to stress upon is that in my session, whenever I do such sessions, I would stress upon the technology. See, I am not here to promote EMIL. I am not here to sell NDT instruments from EMIL to your institute or the participants. I am here to discuss about the technology. So Thank you very much. And just consider such sessions as the technology discussion session only. And I try to avoid the commercial thing, which I always do, and expect the same from you. So thank you very much, Marwadi Foundation Trust, for providing us the opportunity. And we are always ready to have such kind of discussions or sessions in future also. Thanks, Tarak bhai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah. Okay. And participants, tomorrow we will be having the first session little early at the 8 o'clock in the morning, as the faculty is from Canada. So just to match our time, faculty has requested to start this session earlier. So we will have our first session in the morning at 8 o'clock, and there will be little bit disturbance in your schedule, but just to have the benefit of the expert, he will be talking on the field measurement aspect in structural health monitoring. So all are requested to join in time. Okay, and subsequently we will be having the session from Mr. Jayant Laklani also. So we'll be meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp. Thank you, and thank you, Kandap sir, again. Yeah, sure.